Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We got a video today of a recent senior session that I'm really proud of, and when we delivered it, I did a Zoom call with the senior's mom, and we went through all the photos, and she absolutely loved everything, and it was very hard for her to narrow it down to her few selections. But what I'm going to do today is I made a little behind the scenes video, just some cell phone footage that was captured. It shows a little bit of our setup, some of our posing, a little bit how I interact with the client. We're going to watch that behind the scenes video, and then we're going to go through and talk about a few images, kind of break down where the lighting was, what my thoughts were on the posing, lenses, camera gear, and etc. So let's go ahead and run the behind the scenes video. It's pretty short. You'll kind of see the photos that we're going to go over, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. And after this video, what I've got coming soon is I think I'm going to take one, possibly two raw images, and I'll record going through the full edit from beginning to end. So let's roll that behind the scenes. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into that first photo. I'm going to try not to take too much time, just do a quick little breakdown and go over our thoughts of kind of how we set it up. So the camera I use today, so any portrait session I do, I walk around with a Sony A7iii, two of them actually. And mostly now I use the 85 G Master 1.4 and the 35 G Master 1.4, and it's rare that I usually change lenses. I just swap cameras and shoot with those two. So in this particular case here, I used the 85. I shot it at f1.4. It was at 1/500th of a second, and my ISO was 160. So typically what I like to do is darken down the frame and get a very dramatic look with a darkened background and a lit subject, which really separates them. And what I was going for here was something that was kind of more naturalistic, because the client liked something closer to natural light photos. And as any photographer knows, if it's a bad lighting situation, natural light can be really hard to shoot in, especially during the right time of day. So my plan in this case was to still use a flash, but still keep naturally lit backgrounds and just add fill flash. So here, as you can see, I have my Godox AD600 and a 36-inch Octabox. It was double diffused with a deflector plate to help smooth out some of the hot spots on a face, and I have it on a heavy Kupo roller stand here, sandbagged. And if you're going to be walking around a paved surface or something where you don't have to walk a lot of stairs, I highly recommend getting a roller stand. That way you don't have to break down your light, take off the sandbag, repack it back up in your wagon, and walk around everywhere you want to go. So we were able just to walk around and just wheel it all over the place for this entire session. So here I had it to the left of the subject. It was slightly higher and tilted down, kind of 45-degree angle. I don't remember the power of the flash itself, but by going to 500th of a second with this low ISO, I was able to get a background that wasn't completely blown out, still looking like a naturally lit day. And then I add a little bit of fill flash. You can see it makes the tones on her orange outfit and her blue dress and everything there really pop, and it fills in the shadows in the front of her face. Alright, so here we go. Let's jump into photo number 2. This one, again, was shot at f1.4 with the 85. I really like the bokeh you can get at f1.4 on this lens. Now, the ISO was still 160, and I went up to 1/1600th of a second because the background out there in that open courtyard was a lot brighter than what we saw in the previous photo, which is kind of behind two buildings. So by being able to really blur out that background, it gets rid of a lot of distractions that are back there, and it helps your main subject here really be the focus in the photo. Now in this particular case, I had the same light stand, same modifier, same AD600 on the right hand side, just at a frame where you can't see it. Again, lift it up and tilt it about a 45 degree down. You can kind of see the little shadow it creates around the nose here from the light of the angle. Now, there was a grate and stuff over here on this left side, kind of like a little fence that was kind of nasty and mucking up the shot, and the client wanted me to remove it. And the way I thought best to do that was I copied this right hand side of the frame here, I flipped it in Photoshop, and I kind of masked out the areas in between. That way it wasn't 100% identical. You can tell back here on this left side it looks a little different than it does over here on this right side, but you can also see a few spots on the wall and things that let you know it was completely identical here. So I wanted her to stand in this open walkway, get the leading lines, kind of the textures and patterns of everything around, and that opening behind her. This creates a nice little just pathway of vision here for your client to stand in. And you can tell for this 85mm how sharp it is. Even at f1.4, just about the whole body there is really sharp, and it really locked onto her face too. The eye autofocus on the Sony A7iii is amazing, even with today's standards. Now, what I was thinking here with this photo is I wanted her to get in the middle of this walkway, separate the feet a little bit, get that bend in the knee, stand up real tall, and kind of look like she just owns the space. Wanted her to look powerful in this shot. By adding a little bit more strength and power, what I'd like to do is switch to that little bit wider angle at 35, get a little bit low, and give her that towering presence in the frame. So for this one, I shot at f1.4, 1/1600th of a second, and I got all the way down to ISO 80 to try to darken down the background a little bit more. I wasn't going super dramatic with it, but again, I wanted it to still look almost like natural light, and then add some flash to fill in shadows on the subject. I got the light camera left, again lifted up about 45 degrees down towards the subject. Again, you can tell by some of the shadows that we have on here where the light placement was. And this is one of my favorite shots from the session, and the client's mother definitely loved it. Okay, here we go. Let's move on to the next. This framing here, earlier in the session we had been at the top of the stairs and got a few photos, and then by that walkway where we did that previous one, we came and found the bottom end of this staircase, and I wanted to get her in there lined up where you hit this little left elbow. So she's posed there at the corner where this bottom part of the stairs hits this elbow, then turns left and goes back up. So by her being able to sit in this elbow here, it takes the grate here on the left, and this rail leads up towards the subject. Then we have this kind of bokeh here in the background on the right. So we got a little bit of, I guess you can call it almost negative space, a little blurred out background. She's definitely separated by shooting this at f1.6, and you got this leading line here and this texture on this grate going to the subject, and the perpendicular lines here going on the staircase looks really good. The texture on the stairs look really good, and I thought this was just a perfect framing to put our subject in. Now, in order to light this one, I have the stand on the ground, maybe 7-8 feet away from the subject to camera right, and it's lifted up rather high because she's a few steps up higher than I am. And we again tried to tilt it down, as you can tell from the little shadows here under the nose, under the chin, under the neck here, the angle of the light. And again, even at f1.6, and using this Sony combination here, this was the 35 mil again, and it's just really sharp. This is one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used. You can see the detail all the way down through the dress, through the textures here on the stairs, all of that. It comes out super sharp. For this next shot here, I jump back up to the 85 mil to give it more of the kind of three-quarter portrait type look than the low, towering, powerful pose. And again, you can see how sharp it is on the face all the way through the subject until it gets, to where the extensions come out closer to the camera here. But as far as the upper body, the hair, the eyes, super sharp with that 85. I wanted to stick with that same staircase and just get us a few different looks because I really like the area. I thought it had really great potential to give us a few different outcomes, a few different poses, a few different compositions. So the lighting in this one is kind of to the right of me, right of the subject. It's again tilted up a little higher than her and pointed down. You can see again where the shadows under the nose, under the chin, and get an idea of the light placement. Now, I kept the light almost in the same exact spot for this photo as I did the previous one. I just had to drop it down because she's sitting lower on the stairs as opposed to standing higher up where that elbow was. These two shots are some of my favorites from the whole session. Now, I shot at 1.4 for both of these to try to get a little blur in the background. Now, one of these images was shot with the 35mm. The other image was shot with the 85mm. And I don't know if you can tell already just by looking at them, but we'll explain kind of the difference between the two. The one on the left here was shot with the 35mm. You can kind of tell by how it creates a little bit wider background here. So we get in close, it makes it look like the leg extensions are a little bit closer to the camera and her face is a little bit farther away. The longer lenses tend to kind of create a little more compression. It brings the background, it makes it look closer to the subject, and if you have any kind of legs or anything sticking out towards the camera, it doesn't give it that feel that if it's like right in your face. So if you see here, her feet are extended about the same exact distance as they are here in the left photo, but these here on the left appear closer to the camera and the background appears farther away because it's a wider angle lens. So I wanted to get two different looks in the same location and get two different poses out of it. So we got the more serious look here, more stoic on the face. We've got the real, smiling, happy pose here for graduating. She's throwing up the hook'em horns because she's going to UT. So you can tell the lighting on the face here is a little bit different, or overall lighting on the subject is because it was a cloudy day and the sun kept poking in and out. So the slight difference you see here in the lighting combined with my 8600 I was using is just dependent on how much the sun was either behind the clouds or not at the time we took the photo. It was, maybe seconds or just a few minutes apart, but when that sun moves in and out of that shade, it could be really drastic changes for your photo. So between the 35 and the 85, I couldn't really pick which one was my favorite. I liked them both, and the client ended up picking one of each as well. So this image is by far my favorite one from the session. I have the 85 back on. Again, I'm shooting at f1.4, and I pretty much threw that natural light look out of the window. I wanted to go for a nice dramatic, kind of something that's fitting more of my personal artistic style, and the client ended up choosing it because she loved it so much. So I darkened down the frame in camera as much as I could because I wanted to stay at f1.4 to blur out the background. So in this case, while shooting at f1.4 with the 85, I went all the way up to 1/8,000th of a second with a low ISO to try to darken down the natural light. And even then, you can still see that her arm here, that's overexposed, that's washed out. There's nothing I can do about that. Even with my settings, I would need some kind of ND filter or something to darken the frame a little bit farther, which I did not have on me at the time, so I had to work with it the best I could. You can see on her other arm here too that this is also blasted out. I tried, taking down exposure, pulling down the highlights without making it too gray and muddy looking. So I like the way this rock formation here, to the right of me, it's a flat line. You'll see in the behind the scenes video of that, and then it gets this nice curve, and then you got all these vertical lines above her on this grate on the fence. There's just a lot going on here. The grass, the rock, the fence, the sun peeking in through the top of the frame, and I just had to stop and get a shot here, and it ended up being my favorite. So this was the second outfit of the day that the client used. She really loved it, and I just thought, the leg crossed over, the arm resting on the knee, then you have the arm here resting on the rocks. She had great posture, looked very classy, and just a great pose to show her maturity as she goes into her next step at UT. And just one quick little bonus photo we'll go over. With this outfit, I wanted to catch her walking, catch her in motion, a natural pose, get that dress flowing because it was windy a little bit, and we can get her just natural walk, natural gait here. And this one was shot in complete natural light. So I got her to come around this corner you see here on the right. I told her to kind of walk one foot in front of the other, give me some looks left, some looks right, and I just wanted to catch her in motion. Now, when I have a subject that's walking, I try to time the photos to where it's either before the front foot lands on the ground or right before the back foot is about to take off. So this one, as her front foot hits the ground, the back one here, she's up on her toe, the heel's starting to come off, and she's about to begin her next step. And this is really great for runway models, and when you see a lot of magazines catching somebody in motion, they try to time those shots like that, and that's some of the best ones you always see on display. So no flash in this case, all natural light. I pulled down the saturation on the greens and the yellows in the background a little bit so it didn't distract. It was kind of just overpowering, very saturated in this frame. So I pulled that down, that way the eye is still kind of drawn towards her. We just caught her on that perfect step. the motion on the dress, the way it's swinging out here over her arm, the way the hair is pulled back as she's walking, and I love the look over the shoulder. And this is one of my favorites from the set too. The client didn't pick this one, but I wanted to edit this and throw it in there to show the difference between all the flash ones we've been looking at and this pure natural light one here in the shade, catching her in motion instead of just something that's kind of planned out, kind of posed and rigid. And even with her walking, and this is the 85mm f1.4, you can see the sharpness that I captured her in motion. So it's possible to shoot wide open, catch somebody moving, still lock the focus on their face, and get you something that's really, really sharp, anybody be proud of. Alright, so there's our behind the scenes. That's kind of little the thought process, what I went through doing the senior session. So I appreciate anybody who's made it this far. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Any comments or questions, leave them down below. And stay tuned because I'm going to work on a beginning to end edit from this session. And I have a few other ones that I'm going to do similar to this, where I show the BTS, talk about it a little bit, and I'll pick a photo, maybe two of my favorites, and we'll do edits of those as well. So stay tuned to the channel. We got more coming at you soon.